Welcome back to another episode of Adventures with Bough. So, as you guys saw at the beginning of this episode, our bus came back into the shop on the back of a 50-ton wrecker. So, we went out camping on the weekend. We went out to Pigeon Lake Provincial Park. Great little campground. Actually, it's not little. It's very big, actually. But the lake was really nice. Did some fishing. Had a good time. But when we were setting up camp, we backed into the spot. And it was kind of up a steep hill, and the reverse gear on the bus wasn't in the best shape. And we ended up basically fusing the reverse clutch together. It won't disengage from reverse. So obviously we weren't able to drive it. So we ended up having to tow it back home and get it in the shop. And now we're going to remove the transmission. So we have some quotes going in to a company up in Edmonton to try and get a different style of transmission, an MD3060 instead of the AT545 that's in here. We also have the option to possibly rebuild the AT545 that's in here. But if you know anything about schoolies, you know the AT545 is not the most desirable engine or transmission, and we want to do some mountain driving. So we really like to have a lock-up torque converter and some things that can help us pull up big hills a lot easier and those kinds of things. So we were hoping we could get through maybe until the winter with this transmission, and then do the replacement over the winter when we were parked here back at home. But unfortunately, that's just not going to be the case. So yeah, it's been a rough month for us here at Adventures with Bough. You know, we got tires on the bus, tires on the Jeep. Sydney broke her engagement ring. Had ear infections with Aspen, and now the transmission on the bus. So it's been a little rough, but we're getting through it, and we're taking it day by day. And today we are going to drain the transmission fluid, disconnect all the electrical plugs, disconnect the drive shaft, try and get most of the things out of the way that we can, and then we'll see about getting that transmission out of there. So let's get under the bus and let's get the fluid drained. Alright guys, so we're up underneath the bus here. This right here is the transmission pan. Trans goes back a little bit further here. It's got the parking brake on it. It goes up to about here. That's where the trans ends. It's right around here. So what we got underneath here, headlamp, great little tool. It always puts light exactly where you need it. We've got a big bright flashlight right over here, just behind there. Got some plastic. So this is actually a shower curtain that I couldn't return because I bought too many. But we're going to do that. We're going to cover the floor because there's a lot of trans fluid in here. It's going to make probably a bit of a mess. So we're going to cover the floor with that guy. We got behind me over here, we got an oil pan ready to catch all the trans fluid. Right on this side, there is a drain plug over here on the back side of the transmission. But I can't really put the camera over there. I might grab the GoPro, but I can't put the camera over there because of the exhaust pipe that's right here behind my head. The camera can't actually see it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to lay this down, get this all laid out, get the fluid draining, and then we're going to go about disconnecting the drive shaft back here while that fluid's draining. So let's get to it. Alright guys, so we've got the trans fluid removed and put into this bucket. We've got the drive shaft disconnected and tied up. And now, if you go online, you can order a service manual for your transmission. So in our case, it's the AT545 Allison. So you can get this guy here, Allison Mechanics Tip Transmission Manual. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the transmission removal process. And it's basically got a step-by-step removal for all of the transmission parts. And then once we get there, we're basically just going to go step by step through the transmission removal and get it pulled out. So yeah, let's find it in here and then we'll head back onto the bus. Alright, Beans. So, after about an hour and 45 minutes, a little bit over, we were able to get rid of everything that connects into the transmission. So that includes any electrical sensors, the fill line, filter line, inline, outline, all those kinds of things have been removed from the transmission. So now what we need to do is go and remove, there's a little cover on the bottom of the bell housing between the transmission and the engine. We take off those two little bolts, and inside there's going to be the torque converter and the flex plate. And what we have to do is remove the bolts that hold the torque converter to the flex plate. That way the transmission can basically freely rotate and the engine can freely rotate. They are no longer connected. Then once we do that, we need to support the transmission, remove all the bolts around the bell housing, and then the transmission basically needs to slide backwards and come out. So I'm not going to actually pull the transmission tonight because I don't have the transmission jack set up yet, and I also don't think I currently have a way to get the transmission out of here. I think the transmission is too tall to slide underneath the frame rail. So what I'll need to do is get a jack that's big enough to lift up the front end of the bus and put it up on some wood blocks. So probably gonna need 6 to 8 inches, I think, extra to get it out from under here. But I don't have a jack that's big enough. The biggest floor jack I have is 4 ton, and I don't think that's gonna suffice to lift the front of the bus. I could probably lift one tire at a time, but probably pretty sketchy. So I'm gonna go pick up a better jack, probably like a 30 or a 20 or a 32 ton jack. That way I know that I'm safe when I'm lifting it. And also pick up a transmission jack, or I might just build a transmission cradle that can go on the floor jack that we have. That's also an option. But yeah, so this is a big transmission. That's the only thing. It's not like a car transmission where you just kind of throw a jack underneath it and slide it out. You know, it's probably, I want to say probably 800 pounds. So yeah, pretty hefty. But let's get those flex plate bolts undone, and then that'll be it for tonight. Alright guys, so we have got this grody, disgusting starter out of the bus. And so the starter comes out here. This is the gears that engage with the flywheel right here. The gear's looking really good shape, so that's a really good bonus. The only thing that isn't good about this is how dirty it is. So we're gonna clean this up with a whole bunch of brake clean. We'll scrape it all clean, it'll be good to go. And we'll put it back in there later. But through this hole, so this part here goes into the flywheel housing, or the bell housing, and attaches to the flywheel. And in this area, right about here, there is these little bolts, I think they're M10s or something like that, that attach from the torque converter to the flywheel. So what we need to do is put a big wrench on the front crank case, or the front crank bolt. I think it's on the harmonic balancer or on the crank pulley. We need to rotate the engine a little bit to get those bolts to line up. So there's, I think, 6 of them. So you have to rotate one, turn the engine, rotate it again, turn the engine, take the bolt out, 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 until they're all out. Then once they're out, we need to build a transmission cradle that will attach to our jack. And I looked at just getting one that like goes on top of the regular floor jack to put on there, but I don't think it's big enough for the transmission that we have. It says for like 1,100 pounds, which I don't think our transmission is over 1,100 pounds, but it's too long. Like it won't, the cradle won't like fit on side to side. So we'll just weld something out of some angle iron, get it all welded up, and get it set and ready to go. So first things first, let's get this engine rotated, and let's get those bolts out. So it's kind of hard to see what's going on under here, but I built a big platform for the transmission to sit on. Basically covers the entirety of the pan. I have no way of really getting up higher or closer to the actual housing of the transmission, so hopefully that's going to work. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put a strap around the back, the middle, and the front of the transmission to this jacking plate to make sure that transmission won't wobble, won't fall off or anything like that. Again, it's a really big, heavy piece of steel, so you don't want it to fall off on you. Once we get those straps set up, then we're going to start undoing the bolts around the bell housing. And I think we're going to start with the top ones that are inside. Remove those first, then we'll basically work our way, do the ones at the bottom, and then we'll work our way around the sides of the bell housing, kind of cross pattern, to try and slowly pull it off. We have just a tiny bit of pressure on the jack holding the transmission. You don't want a lot because it will end up binding the bolt. So we have just a tiny little bit there, and yeah, then we're going to try and pull this out. Let's see what we can do here. That transmission is no longer attached to the bus, so it is separated, and we can take it in for some diagnostic testing and figure out what the hell happened to it. Unfortunately, when we took it out, the torque converter didn't quite come out with the transmission, which is not ideal. It's best to keep the torque converter and the transmission together so you don't have any of the stator pump or the oil pump inside the transmission move around. But it's not impossible to put back together. It's not a big deal. It's just better if you can keep the two together. But just under here, the way I had to kind of wiggle it, I think it just kind of wiggled loose, unfortunately. But transmission is separated, and now we need to get a bigger jack. This little 3-ton jack is not enough to lift the front of the bus. So what we need to do is get like a 12 or maybe even a 20-ton jack, so we can lift the front of the bus up about 8 inches to lift it up, and then put it on blocks, and then we'll be able to pull the transmission out of the side of the bus. So this is basically where she's going to sit until we get that transmission jack. So let's get that, and then we'll get the transmission out. Boogie Beans. So this is where we're going to wrap up this episode. We did end up dropping the oil pan and cleaning it all up, painting it, getting rid of all the leaks and all that stuff, reseal it and put it back in there. But it was a huge process. It took me over 7 hours just to get the oil pan out. And really, really dirty, really, really muddy. Lots and lots of oil and just cut both my thumbs open. You know, just not a fun process. And I just suggest no one does it. Honestly, I don't even want to show a video about how to do it because I don't want anyone to attempt it. It was just so difficult just to seal up some oil leaks. I don't even know if it's worth it. I hope that the pan doesn't leak anymore, but we'll see what happens down the road here. The transmission has been sent to the shop, as you guys saw. It should be done hopefully this week, and the hope is that it's done, we can get it installed in the bus, and we can have the bus on the road for the weekend. Our hope is to do our first real road trip coming up right away here. But yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen. We're still waiting on word from the transmission shop to see where they're at. And yeah, we'll keep you posted. If you guys haven't already, feel free to join us on Instagram and Facebook at Adventures with Boog. And also don't forget to check out shopawb.com for all of our merchandise. We got hats, t-shirts, hoodies, all that kind of stuff on there. Yeah, if you guys enjoyed this episode, hit the like button, smash the subscribe button. And as always, guys, thanks for watching and have a great night.